There we go.
And no one's here because they're all on Cove Stream.
Traitors.
Well, he's offering to have calls with them, so they get to be on stream.
Yeah, honestly.
Like very
No, some of them
enticing offer.
Some of them said they would come here, and then some of them were like, "Oh, I'm gonna dual tab."
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna work,
Already.
but good luck.
And
Hello,
Rudy said that
Cameron
they
and
weren't going
Raptor.
to.
Of course not.
Well, like Rotten said that he'd be here.
Yeah, he got onto the Discord.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, Mr. Kun changed his name so that way people wouldn't keep mispronouncing it and then get demonetized or their channels taken down.
What, you mean by saying coon?
I always pronounced it just how it was spelled, Kun.
I know.
That's how I thought it was supposed to be.
The previous head of my flat left behind a bottle of bug spray. Luckily, I am no traitor. I love you, Raptor.
Woo, Raptor.
That's my boy.
And how y'all's doing this evening?
I am drinking lots of water.
Good.
I'm drinking Pepsi.
That's it's not out of like a health conscious choice that I'm making. It's because there's no Gatorade in the house.
Oh. Well, that, and it's like, yeah, please don't, almost choke to death on White Claw again tonight.
Yeah.
Was that during Empress Teresa?
Yes.
Yeah, there was this one scene where pretty much everything was pointless. So I was like, Manny, I'm gonna have you read, and I'm just gonna be continuously drink as throughout. And so he gets that, and then he gets to this really stupid line where it's basically Bhutan jacking off Steve, and Teresa's like the paragons of virtue. And then I spat out some of my drink and then started choking.
Oh dear.
I pronounced my name differently.
It was very funny. You should check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched some of it, but I haven't watched all of it yet.
Kenzie, what was it I said though? I was like, watch, right as I say that though, your friend just shows up in the chat.
I don't know. You were saying something racist.
Yeah. It's like that Family Guy moment, like Stu's like, oh, it's like that time I told that racist joke, like, looks around, like, goes all around the world, makes sure no one's watching. Okay, so these two guys walked into a diner, like a black guy just, like, pops out of the potted plant behind him. Hey, guys, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I pronounce my name differently depending on who I'm talking to, thanks German ancestors, lol. I exist. Raptor, you better do better than existing, cause you're on my stream now. I have underwent mitosis to be in 2 streams at once. Thank you, Bagel. I appreciate that. I had several mental breakdowns reading Empress Teresa. Yeah,
we know, Raptor.
Raptor didn't handle it too well.
Oh,
my grandma's story, that's right.
Yeah. The more we read, the more amused Raptor gets by 69. It's becoming a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Gemma, I think I told you that story before about my grandmother.
Yes, I think so.
I love that when my brother, my cousin, and I talked to our dads, my dad's reaction was your reaction, Kenzie, to that like big paragraph in Empress Teresa, just drink lots.
Mm-hmm.
It's like take
and then die.
Yeah, grab alcohol, big sip.
Cameron, no.
No. That reminds me of another fun Family Guy moment, though.
It'd have to be an old one because nothing is fun about it anymore.
Oh yeah. It's when Chris became a missionary, and the guy in the plane was like, by the way, the word color still colored still flies down there, so get your fill. Just like shoves them out of the plane.
I was watching Family Guy last night because it's on Disney Plus's new thing, Stars. So I was like, I'll watch it. And like I was like, all right, I'll give Family Guy a watch from the beginning again. And the one I watched last night was the one where Peter finds out that he's sort of borderline retarded.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So, what, Reuben Wheatbride, does it say that I'm a genius? No, in fact, it says you're mentally retarded. Oh, yeah? Well, would a mentally retarded guy hire a drunken bulldozer driver to plow down half of his house in celebration of his fantastic test scores? Maybe.
Probably.
Uh-oh. Congratulations!
Or better, when they put up the sign. Oh, come on. What do they think they are? It's so humiliating. What do they expect? Oh, a shiny red ball.
Yeah. And when they're at dinner, okay, the helmet I understand, but why the water wings? Well, you did order the soup. Oh, come on, you think... These didn't help at all!
One of my favorite lines from the early seasons. I think it's the one where I think it's one where I think it's maybe Death in it, but when
Yeah.
he's played by Norm Macdonald.
Mhm.
And but there's one where it's just my favorite Chris moment is where it was like, it was like because you're like when he's sitting in the car and like there's just like Andy Pandy dolls, sort of these like two like yeah, you kind of Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls, and he's just like, "Where are we going, Mom and Dad? Why won't you talk to me?" It's like that line just cracks me up.
I don't know why, but that reminded me of an American Dad moment.
Oh, hang on. Raptor has a great simile. Family Guy is like watching some delicious food rotting.
Yes!
That's a great simile.
Oh, and Raptor also said, 69? Ha 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 ha! That's a funny joke, Kenzie.
Raptor, we're not reading Empress Teresa. You don't have to be like this tonight. Focus.
But,
what was the American Dad moment?
it was the episode where, what was the son's name? Steve?
Steve, yeah.
Yeah. He wants to be a backup dancer for a boy band. And, like, the
Oh,
whole
yes.
episode, he just, like, keeps coming up behind people and start doing weird dance moves. And at the end, they're on the roof, and he's like, you see? I was here dancing the whole time. I supplemented what you were saying without taking away attention from you. And he just goes, man, we really should have spaced out his vaccinations.
I love that.
So I only remember there was an episode where a tunnel was dug from Peter's house to the pub. Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember when a British guy bought their bar and turned it into a British pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was played by Hugh Laurie, the
Yeah.
British guy.
What the hell's that? Oh, cricket smashing game!
My favorite episode as a kid was the Back to the Future parody where Peter wants to go back in time to when he was 18 again, but then he fucks up the timeline where he's not married to Lois.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that one.
Alright, so let's see.
And then it just ends with an entire Rickroll.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I saw someone on Twitter a while ago posted like a picture of Chris and Meg sitting on their couch watching TV from like season 2. Like Chris is like leaning his head on his hand, Meg's like just reclining on the other half of the couch. Like, everything was drawn nicely, and then like they compared it to a picture of a more modern episode where everything is just nothing but perfectly straight lines. They're both just saying they're stock still like robots. It's like there's no life in it. It's
that's what. It's kind of what they did to The Simpsons.
Yeah, especially the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
I like the lower quality one.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, we're nearly 10 minutes in, so shall we get started?
Yeah, I just had one question because I'm voicing Kat. Obviously, when she's not talking, are we just going to take it in turns to read out her sort of inner monologue that she's sort of writing, or is that what I'm going to be reading? Well, just out of
Anything
curiosity.
that's not dialogue will just take turns as normal.
Do we also
Yeah,
have to read those in British accents?
No.
Aw.
that can be our reprieve.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Oh, by the way, guys, this was written by a British person, so for all the dialogue stuff, we're doing British accents.
Yeah. And
But
And
apparently,
Raptor,
I
before you
can't
even
be
finish, yes, the
Scottish.
stories from Reddit.
yeah. Yeah,
It's like,
no,
and apparently, I can't be Scottish because then it wouldn't make sense.
no, it wouldn't be fair.
Wouldn't be fair. That's what I meant.
Okay, you can't make the protagonist Scottish. You can make one of your other characters Scottish.
Okay, good.
Because you're proof that some of them migrate away from their home country.
Yeah.
Gemma's voicing a cat? A talking cat?
Mike, that's Raptor's joke.
Yes, Mike, Gemma can only speak to each of us once and to give us advice. And then she's gonna get hit by a car, so we'll go in to check on her and she'll just be lying on a bed with gauze like gently draped around her head.
Sounds about right.
So that poor fucking cat in that movie, it's like, what did they do to that thing?
I know.
Technically, there's laws they have to abide by, so this isn't
Okay,
the 80s anymore.
so shall we do the typical, like, go 3 pages each?
Yeah.
Hey,
Alright. Wait, Raptor says, a speaking feline? Alright, well, actually, Gemma, do you want to, like, say something first, like, about, like, give a quick idea of the story or how you found it? Yeah,
All
sorry,
right. Yeah. So.
yeah, Gemma found this one.
All right. So I don't. I usually, when I can't sleep, I will delve onto no sleep just for a bit of a laugh, because then I
for the
can
irony.
sort of, for the irony, of course. Yes. And like sometimes you can find some gems in there, even though you've got to wade through a whole pile of shit.
Wait, did you guys
So I
hear that?
decided.
Gemma finds some gems.
Yes.
Shut the fuck up, Manny.
So much hatred in your voice there.
I was amazed that you could actually pick that up. I was speaking so softly. I was like, is the chat even gonna hear this?
Honestly, I thought, like, you had, like, put your phone right up to your mouth to whisper that into it with how it sounded.
I did a little bit.
No, well, so, and what I did was I was sort of looking around, so I decided to go like top posts of all time, and the name of this story like really intrigued me. Like, I'm just gonna, like, the name of the story is really long, so I'm gonna try and like find it, so because I can actually read it out to you, because that would make sense, and I should have done this earlier. But I didn't have to wade too far down when I put top posts of all time. Someone else speak for a second.
So basically, is Reddit actually did something right for once
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
and upvoted
So,
an actual good story.
because you know how like sometimes they'll write like a really long and like long-winded sort of title for the stories that they do on there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I'm giving it a good. I'm going to give a good example of a story that was found on there, and that's my dead girlfriend keeps messaging me on Facebook. You know, stuff like that.
That
But,
one I've
like, that's
definitely heard
actually a
of.
good story. Yeah, but the story's name is "The Previous Tenant of My New Flat Left a Survival Guide. I'm not sure I want to live here anymore." So that sort of was like, oh, okay, that sounds different. So, and then I spent about 3 hours reading the whole thing at night. I just couldn't put it down. I thought it was really well written. I was really impressed. Plus, it was nice to have a story set in the UK for once.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my sort of interlude, not
Awesome.
interlude.
So you have to stop acting so
Prelude.
surprised. The guy who wrote Pen Pal started on Reddit.
Yeah,
Yes, that's true. Prelude. That was it. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Alright, so without further ado, I moved in with my boyfriend yesterday. We've been together for 5 years now, and we're old and wise enough to settle down and finally leave our parents' houses. He just turned 24, and I'm 22. He's the love of my life. His name is Jamie, and I couldn't be happier to be living with him. When we decided to make the leap, we spent 2 months looking at flats and houses. We couldn't afford to buy yet, so renting was our only option, but the prices were astronomical. For our budget, we would have been lucky to get a box room and a stove. Jamie works for a local 24-hour fast food restaurant, and I'm training to be a teacher. The early stages of training don't pay much, and I owe a lot in student loans, so finances are tough. We had almost given up hope until we found our flat. It was nothing special, but to us it was a palace. A spacious two-bedroom apartment with views of a city park, a balcony, and local conveniences. It was in a tower block in a not-so-nice area, but neither of us had been wealthy growing up. We weren't fussy, just grateful to be together. The advert was sweetened by the deposit-free option and open-ended tenancy. The landlord was happy to sign a 5-year contract if we wanted. That sort of thing never happens in the city. We were told that along with no deposit, we would also have no inspections, but would be liable to pay for any damage when we ended the tenancy. I'd never heard of anything quite like it. We knew that for our budget and location, we weren't going to get any better. We snapped the place up first, not even bothering to view it. It felt like our only chance. Move-in day rolled around quickly, and yesterday we got the keys to our first home together. It was such a strange feeling. The day was chaos, getting our stuff in and up in the lift. We were flat number 42 on the 7th floor. The items we couldn't get in the lift had to be taken up all the stairs by the removal team. I think they were grateful we weren't any higher up, but I still wish we had been able to give them a better tip. Gemma, do you want to take over?
Yep. In the evening, we settled down on our second-hand sofa, given to us by a cousin of a friend, and watched some TV. We smoked cigarettes on the balcony, looking at the park, and fell asleep on our mattress on the floor super early because we had no energy to put the bed together yet. Jamie had to work at a hideous time of the morning. We slept soundly that night. I felt safe and happy. I don't think that feeling is coming back anytime soon, and it's all due to the note I found this morning. I found it in the kitchen, having a coffee, hours after Jamie had left for his early shift at work. It was in one of those cupboards that were fixed to the wall. There were a bunch of useful items for the previous tenant. Spare keys to the flat, a set of tiny keys that locked and unlocked the windows, necessary for those whose kids this high up, spare smoke alarm batteries, and a folded up piece of paper. The note was handwritten with new occupier flat 42 in beautiful cursive on the blank side. I opened it up and sat down to read. I can't really describe it to you, so I'm going to copy it out below. Dear new occupier, firstly, welcome to your new home. I lived here before you for 35 years with my husband. Unfortunately, he had an incident at home recently that I'd rather not discuss that claimed his life. My sister has now decided I can't keep up with the demands of the property and has insisted that I move her with her husband. I was reluctant at first, but the stairs do kill me at my age, and without Bernie it's filled with sadness. Anyway, when you've lived somewhere for as long as I have, it feels like a person that you know. You understand its personality and what makes it tick. I thought it was probably pertinent that I impart some of that knowledge on you. It's a wonderful home, honestly. I've lived through best and worst years, and leaving it behind is very emotional. But if you're to survive and get the best out of it, there are some steps you need. Number 1. The landlord will never bother you. He doesn't visit, call, or communicate in any way, but make sure you pay your rent in timely fashion, always. I've only dealt with him once in 35 years, and let's just say I never missed another rent. Any repairs required you speak to the agent you rented the place with. 2. Do not use the communal lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m. Just don't do it. This step is vital if you're to have a happy life here. It really is life or death. Don't do it. This has cost me and many others in the building greatly, and I would rather not elaborate on why you shouldn't do this. Just please don't do it. I cannot stress this enough. Mackenzie to do number 3, because I think that'll be the end of the 3 pages.
Yeah.
3. When you hear the strange animal noises coming from flat 48, don't question it. Mr. Prentice lives there and he's a lovely chap. Don't be afraid to say hello to him in the corridor or on the stairs. He's old school, so he never risks the lift. But whatever you do, don't check on him when you hear the noises. You'll know when you hear them. 4. If you ever come across a window cleaner on the balcony, ignore him. He may seem like the nicest fellow you've ever had trying to sell you something at the door, but it really is best that you don't engage. He will go away if you ignore him. But he tries pretty hard the first few times, so you'll need some resilience. Whatever you do, don't offer him anything. No money, no hot drink. Don't leave food scraps out. Bin or refrigerate them immediately. If you have small animals, it's imperative that you watch them eat and take away any leftover food immediately after they are done. This and Rule 2 go hand in hand, and the things forage all day and seem to really love animal feed. You don't want them in your flat, I promise. You can leave what you want out between 1:11 and 1:33 a.m., so you may want to feed your pets then. 6. Don't communicate with any neighbors who can come from flats 65 through 72. These flats suffered a fire in the late 80s that devastated the whole floor. All the residents died in their homes. The building was mostly council-owned at the time, and they never bothered to renovate the flats. They've been empty ever since, but every now and again, someone will knock at your door claiming to live in one of these flats and will ask to borrow some sugar. They will seem entirely average, but you must shut and lock the door immediately. I installed 2 extra security bolts to avoid these fuckers. I don't like to swear, but at my age, they really are fuckers.
Alright. 7. Simple one for you here. Keep a weapon in each room. Sometimes you follow all these steps and something still slips through the net. Better to be safe than sorry. 8. The building has a committee that will try and get you to join. It's one of those neighbors groups about improving living conditions for all residents. It's a nice group, and the lady who runs it, Terry from Flat 26, is a fantastic neighbor. By all means, get involved. But I wouldn't recommend babysitting Terry's 2 children. She'll ask you, because the poor woman needs a break, but if you accept, don't say I didn't warn you. 9. Stray hairless cats sometimes roam in the hallway. I know they're supposedly a special, expensive breed, but they don't belong to anyone. They're mostly harmless, but don't pick them up. Not unless you see one of those neighbors that claims to live in 65 to 72. Then grab the cat and lock it inside with you. It'll burn your skin a little, but the cats are friendly, and I wouldn't want to see them hurt. 10. There is no way to fix the damp patch on the ceiling in the bedroom. Sometimes it will turn a deep crimson and look quite concerning, but please try not to be alarmed. It doesn't drip, it doesn't get any bigger, and it's been there longer than I have. The landlord won't budge on it, according to the agents. I flagged it many times, even called the police the first night it changed color, but it was a waste of time, and it will be for you too. It's best to ignore it. 11. You can trust the postman. His name is Ian Flanders, and he's been the postman since before I moved in. He has his own key to the main door and delivers post to the door every morning at 8:54. I can't include everything here, or it would become a novel, but if you have any questions, Ian will help you. 12. Finally, the first few weeks are the worst. You'll feel like you've made a mistake. I'm sure reading this you already do, but if you can get through the first few weeks, it really is a lovely block to live in. Every property has its quirks, and this one is a little extra special, but you can be truly happy here if you just take my advice. I wish you all the best. I really do. Yours truly, Mrs. Prudence Hemmings.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Right. I don't really know what to think after reading the note. Hopefully it was some sort of joke, but the agent had said that the previous tenant was an elderly lady, and I can't see anyone named Prudence Hebbings attempting to play practical jokes on someone they'd never met. There were also parts of the note I couldn't disprove. There was indeed a large damp patch above the bed that me and Jamie had already discussed reporting. No crimson, but it definitely existed. I'd also commented on the beautiful Sphinx cat roaming the halls as we were moving in. I started to get seriously freaked out. Our dream, our beautiful little home had just become a source of fear and confusion. I checked the time and it was 9:14. Damn it. Out of time to catch Postman Ian. When I opened the door to check, sure enough, 2 letters addressed to a Mrs. Hevings sat on the doorstep. At about 11:15 my worst fears were truly confirmed when a friendly middle-aged looking man carrying window cleaning equipment knocked on my balcony door. I ignored him. I didn't want to take the risk until I'd spoken to Jamie and showed him the note. I'd texted him already to rush home. I felt bad as the man rapped his knuckles against the door for over 10 minutes, but honestly, the longer it went on, the more I was terrified. My windows were sparkling, and due to our lack of curtains, I couldn't even hide from his gaze. I felt so exposed. He stayed for a total of 30 minutes exactly, and never once did he stop looking or knocking. He shouted the occasional ultra-friendly line or humble request for a beverage in the heat through the door, but I did my best to avoid eye contact. When he finally left, I looked outside every window in the flat, but I couldn't see him on any of the other balconies or see any equipment suggesting he was around. He had vanished completely. Jamie still hadn't texted me back. He must have been having a rough shift. It was a Friday and they were always busy. It wasn't often that he didn't reply. He was due home in around an hour anyway. I read the note probably hundreds of times over. I tortured myself reading it for the next hour, desperately waiting for Jamie to come through the door to tell me it was all crazy. I was all crazy and I should relax.
I hoped for that so much, but Jamie never came. His shift should have finished around midday, but by 2 p.m. he still wasn't home. I panicked. I cried. I left over 100 voice messages on his phone, but got nowhere. I finally decided it had been long enough that calling his work wouldn't embarrass him, and his boss told me that he had never turned up for his shift. I thought about it. What could have happened? And then it hit me. Jamie's shift started at 4 a.m. today. He would have left the flat at 3:15 and taken the lift down the stairs. I don't know what to do. I've tried to convince myself it was all a big joke. Maybe Jamie wrote the note and got his boss in on it. A voice in my head kept telling me that he couldn't write like that if he had tried, but I had to attempt to fool myself. It's getting late and he still isn't home. What if it's all true? I think we made a big mistake. So much has happened in the last 24 hours. I'm so stressed and I've barely slept since I discovered that Jamie was missing. It's starting to make me feel a little twitchy, but I thought I'd better update you guys. I was so overwhelmed by all the suggestions you gave me and have taken more than a few of them on board. I'm definitely going to be getting a huge planter full of sage for the balcony, and I did spill a little salt in my doorway. I'm sorry to disappoint, but that didn't help at all. There's nothing I'm following quite like There's nothing I'm following quite like Mrs. Hemming's rules. I've followed them to the letter so far, and lo and behold, I'm still alive. That's not to say it hasn't been tough. I'll start from the beginning. I was going crazy, and a few hours after my last post, Jamie still hadn't returned. He had been gone for almost 24 hours. His work had called me multiple times. I don't know what to say, so I just keep ghosting the calls. I was bang in the middle of the danger time when I decided checking the lift had to be my first step, but I wasn't going to break that rule.
I waited. I waited desperately for 3:34 to come, and I'm ashamed to say that when it did, I remained paralyzed to our sofa for almost half an hour before I found the nerve to leave the flat. It was 4:02 when I finally reached the lift. The lift in this building is old and rickety. It hasn't been updated in a very long time, and has likely been here as long as the building. Its big, clunky buttons stared back at me as I glared at them, hoping for some sort of answer or clue. My heart thumped and I was overcome with a feeling of dread, but nothing came of any of it. It was hopeless. I stepped inside the lift, rode up and down a few floors, and searched the entire perimeter with a phone torch for anything I could find. I found nothing. Jamie had completely disappeared. Sobbing and exhausted, I rode back to floor 7 and turned my key in flat 42, the perfect home that felt anything but home at that point. I sat at the cheap flat packed dining table we'd managed to put together on move-in day and cried, my hands shaking as I held my phone. I was flitting between reading all your comments and contemplating calling the police for an hour, but I decided to call my friend Georgia instead. I needed a real person here. Things were so crazy, I wasn't sure the police would be able to help with what little information I had, but I knew I needed to sound it out with someone. I'll spare you the details again, but I told her everything. She promised she'd be with me in the late morning. She had to take her younger brother to school. I waited anxiously, not before arming every room exactly as advised. Before I knew it, I looked at the clock and it was 8:23. I had around half an hour until the postman was due to show up. There was no way I was missing him today. I stood by the door, looking vacantly at the wood, like someone in a film who was possessed. The exhaustion was really setting in, but Jamie was all I could think of. Pure adrenaline was keeping me standing.
At 8:52, I opened the door. The next 2 minutes were the longest of my life, but when I saw him, a wave of relief swept my entire body. Right on cue, 8:54, the postman, Ian Flanders, stood in front of me, a smile that barely hid his concern covering his younger than expected face. He didn't look old enough to have been the postman for over 35 years, but I was too distracted by the answers that I needed to care.
You must be the new tenant.
He stated, but in a way that it sounded like a question. I struggled with my answer, so I got straight to the point. Mrs. Hemmings left me a note. She said to speak to you if...
Can I come in, dear? I think we need to chat.
I ushered Ian in, my hands still shaking as I flapped them in the direction of the sofa, gesturing for him to sit down. I shoved the now slightly crumpled note in his lap and waited.
I'm glad Prue still thinks that highly of me. I will miss that old girl.
He said with a coy smile as he reached the end of the note. Can you help me or not? I had no time for his ego trip over a moved-on neighbour.
I can help, but I can't stop for long, so it'll have to be quick. I've walked these halls delivering the post for 40 years. I've seen it all, everything Prue's mentioned and more. What do you need to know?
He said. Ian was nothing like what I expected. The note made me feel like he was going to be a kindly old grandad-type figure. I couldn't have been more wrong. Postman Ian spoke with a thick city accent and wore a heavy gold chain around his tattooed neck. He dyed his greying hair boot polished black. His demeanour was thankfully non-threatening, but extraordinarily cocky. He was the sort of man I imagined in a betting shop, rubbing his grubby hands on notes as he bragged over a win. He didn't ask as he lit his cigarette in my living room. I didn't question it. We would usually smoke outside, but I wasn't going to argue over technicalities. I grabbed a bowl for the ash and lit one too. Let's start with the things in the lift. My boyfriend is missing, and he took the lift at 3:15 over 24 hours ago. We hadn't got this note yet. I haven't heard from him since. I need to get him back. I barked at him as if the louder I spoke, the more I could influence his answer, but nothing prepared me for what he said. His skin turned pale and his harsh-looking face became more sympathetic.
Alright, first of all, I just want to say sorry, I forgot city accent is kind of Cockney, so I'll try for more of that. He's dead,
Okay.
love. Forget about him. Only one person ever come back from the lift at that time of night, and it was Prue herself, after witnessing it. Those creatures ripping the victim apart. Poor Prue was traumatized. Your boy is gone. Let go and follow the rules.
He was blunt, but I could.
Sorry.
He was blunt, but I could tell he felt sorry for me.
There must be something I can do,
There are things I've Had to bring back those who are lost, but I've never seen a solid proof they work. It'll be irresponsible of me to tell you to do something that might get you killed, too. It's nice of you, honest. Just get over here and live the status quo. Sorry if I sound harsh. I don't mean to. But you seem like a decent young lady. I don't want to see you go too soon.
I asked about what Mrs. Hemmings had seen in the lift and if they were sure it had happened to all who entered it. I refused to believe that Jamie was dead. There had to be something I could do, and if I knew what it was dealing with, I could better be prepared.
It was awful what happened. I wasn't there, but this is what I was told. Little Lila was such a cute kid. She used to open the door and give me a tip when I delivered the post. She was Prue's granddaughter. Lila was her son's little girl, and that night she was staying over for the first time. Prue finally felt confident that she could protect Lila from all the strange things that happened here. She was wrong. Little Lila had a problem with sleepwalking, and she took a trip into the hallway at 1:30 in the morning. Prue took too long to notice the sound she had heard was the front door, and by the time she reached the lift, she saw the creatures dragging Lila's limbs away from her body. She tried to fight them, even killed one, but she couldn't save the little girl.
It was hysterical, imagining Jamie's fate.
What are the creatures? Have you ever actually seen them?
I asked.
No one really knows what they are, love. There's something to do with the building and all its quirks. No one's ever seen them elsewhere. We don't know where they came from, just that they're here. I've seen them a few times over the years, usually when new neighbors have left biscuits down for the cats and dogs, or haven't disposed of food waste properly. The curious little creatures, mostly harmless out of the hours Prue warned you about, but if they're fed, they can become quite vicious looking for more food. That's why you have to bin all your scraps, or hide them, pack them, or whatever. Just don't leave them out, and don't use the lift at those times, and you're safe from the creatures. They're a little smaller than humans, but they're a similar shape. They come with grotesque rodent-like features, and are far larger than any rodent could be. Like rodent children, I suppose. They have 2 rows of sharp teeth per jaw, and are consistently hungry. When they eat, they crunch down in a violent and disgusting way, dripping spittle everywhere. Prue said she could hear her granddaughter's bones shatter in those jaws.
He went pale at the thought of that, but continued.
When they first arrived in the building, there were hundreds. It caused pandemonium amongst the residents. We lost the residents of more than 30 of the individual homes, but the residents fought back and managed to kill all but the strongest minority of them. The creatures left over were incredibly dangerous and seemingly impossible to eradicate, so the residents struck a deal that they will be left unharmed and allowed to live in the building in return for the residents' safety at all times, but if anyone wanders into the lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m., they are fair game. This time frame is the period the creatures are at their most frenzied, and restricting them to the lift was safer for all parties. God help anyone who encounters them during those hours. They've been here ever since, claimed lots of unsuspecting people avoiding the stairs, but nothing like when they first arrived. A few got put down for not holding up their end of the bargain, but we haven't had an incident outside the lift in years. Count yourself lucky you missed that crisis. Everything is pretty peaceful right now. I'm sorry about your boyfriend. I really have to go. I'm late for my round.
You might take it from here.
Okay. He scrawled his phone number on a bit of paper and handed it to me. Emergencies only. I don't like to be bothered,
You can't go. The note said you would help me.
I exclaimed. And I will, he snapped back, when there's something I can help with. I can't resurrect your boyfriend, and I don't like to be late delivering the post. I will see you soon, love. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe he was leaving me after the information overload and the small ray of hope he had lit inside me, and then squashed.
I'll call the police.
I shouted, desperate to feel as if I was solving this somehow. Try if you want, Ian sighed as he opened the door to leave. It just aggravates the creatures and isn't going to bring your boy back. Mr. Prentice hates it when the police come too. If you want to get any sleep in the next week, then I'd avoid it. Wait a week, report him missing, and learn to adapt to life here, love, or you'll be dead in days. And with that, he shut the door behind him. I opened it again. I had so much more to ask, but he was gone. No sign of him anywhere in the corridor. Maybe it was me losing my mind. I might be imagining all these things. But no matter how much I willed it, the note was still there, and Jamie still wasn't. Georgia arrived not long after Ian had left. I, of course, asked if she had seen him in the corridor to try and affirm to myself that he was real, but she hadn't. She looked at me worried, and held me as I sobbed and told her what the postman had said about Jamie and the creatures. I wasn't sure she believed me. Even as she read the note, she looked skeptical. If she was skeptical, I wouldn't have blamed her. But she had always been supportive. She sat with me for hours while I just sobbed, heartbroken. I was so conflicted as to what to do. I felt insane that I hadn't contacted anybody. But this note had turned out to be accurate so far, and if the postman was to be trusted, then I should wait.
Georgia had been my best friend for many years. She stuck up for me when I was too scared to do it for myself, and had always been the brave one of the two of us. I felt safe around her, so after hours of crying and despairing at the way my life had changed in a matter of days, I finally decided to take a nap. It was early evening and Georgia was watching some TV, just there for me if I needed her. Despite the deprivation, I struggled to fall asleep. I tried to imagine Jamie's arms around me, but it became a more painful reminder that they probably never will again. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity of staring at the damp patch on the ceiling, I drifted off. About 3 hours ago, I woke up, staring at the goddamn damp patch on the ceiling and could hear chatting in the living room. I jumped out of bed and walked towards it. Georgia was on the sofa, with a middle-aged looking woman both nursing a cup of tea and the matching mugs that Jamie had got me for as a move-in present. My blood boiled, but it wasn't their fault. I cleared my throat to get their attention.
Katie, this is Natalia. She lives upstairs. We got chatting, so I made her a cup of tea. I hope you don't mind.
I looked at the dark-haired woman on the sofa, drinking tea from my cup, and nodded. Georgia was a sociable idiot with no understanding of when not to be herself. I wasn't going to lament for her here for it right now. It was her coping. Of course. Hi, Natalia. What flat do you live in? I tried my very best to be polite. I would have had to discuss not bringing people into my home mid-tragedy with Georgia after she'd left, but until then I would be neighbourly. Flat 71. It's so nice to meet you. You have a lovely home. Talia responded, her lips curled at the corners into a smile that wasn't replicated in her eyes or the rest of her facial expression. She looked at me smugly, the full knowledge that I was aware of the implications of what she'd just said. The rules. The flat number. Every now and again, someone will knock at your door claiming to live in one of these flats and ask to borrow some sugar. It will seem entirely average, but you must shut and lock the door immediately. I installed 2 extra security bolts to avoid these fuckers. I don't like to swear at my age, but they really are fuckers. Prue's warning echoed in my mind, and I couldn't take my eyes off Natalia. Something really was off about her. I looked at Georgia sat on the sofa next to her and noticed her sweating. Anyone in the UK knows that it's been hot for a few days, but this was beyond just the ambient temperature. Her entire body was dripping. Suddenly she began to pant. Natalia's eyes were locked to mine, just like the window cleaners had been. Nothing happened before with the cleaner, except this time the rule had been broken. She was already in the flat.
Georgia started to scream as her skin blistered and charred. Her hair fell from her scalp as the skin flaked and melted away from every inch of her. She was being burned alive without a flame in sight. She scratched frantically at her own melting face, digging into the exposed raw flesh. The sound a person makes when they burn alive is like no other. That will never leave me. I screamed and screamed, but no one came to my door. I tried to grab my phone to call Postman Ian, but the wooden surface I had set it down on burned my fingers to the touch and forced me to recoil. She was going to set the whole flat alight. My actions needed to be quicker than a phone call. I grabbed hold of the large knife I had set down on the side earlier when weaponizing, The handle blistered my fingers instantly, but I didn't care. I need to get her out now and help Georgia if I could. I ran towards the dark-haired lady, sweat dripping from my brow the closer I got, and plunged the knife into Natalia's throat. She gripped it and fell to the floor. She didn't bleed like a normal human. Her insides were black, she was still moving, and I figured it probably wouldn't be long before she stood right back up and tried again. So I dragged her into the hallway, ready to bolt the door. As we reached the entrance of the corridor, one of the cats was waiting, hissing at her semi-conscious body. I caught her eyes fixate on it as I dumped her on the floor. I grabbed the cat, pulled him inside, wincing as its skin caused more burns on my lower arms, shut the door, and watched through the peephole. She got up and held her hand to the wound, cauterizing it and walking off towards the lift, as if she hadn't been injured at all. I dropped the cat by that point, but every bit of naked skin it had touched throbbed and burned for at least an hour. Georgia hadn't been as lucky as Natalia with injury recovery. I anonymously called an ambulance for her. I couldn't believe it, but she was still breathing. She was badly burned and her life wouldn't be the same again, but she was alive. And for that, I was grateful. It sounds awful, but I left her at the park across the road from the building, with no phone or ID. She's my best friend and I want to be there, but if I own up to involvement in injuries that bad, they'll suspect me, and I lose the already slim chance that Jamie might be savable. It doesn't mean I don't care about Georgia, but she's alive. I won't believe Jamie isn't until I see it. So now I'm alone again, in the flat, conflicted about what to do. I want to leave, so badly. But this was mine and Jamie's first home together. If he's alive, and I can save him, then I want to be here for him to come back to. If he's dead, the postman is right, then I don't know if I can leave his memory behind.
There's only one person I think could help me right now. So tonight I'm going to do some research, hunt down an address, and tomorrow morning I'm going to visit Prudence Hemmings. I didn't get much sleep last night either. The lack of sleep is making me wonder whether all these things happening are in my mind or not. But I'm reminded every time I see that damn note that it's all real. I spent hours last night searching for anything I could about Prudence Hemmings. If she had lived in a big creepy mansion, I imagine she would have been easy to find. But as folk who live in the tower blocks aren't so well documented, no one cares about our lives, no matter how extraordinary. I found an article about missing person Lila Hemmings. It suggested that she went missing under the care of her grandmother while playing in the park opposite the flats early in the morning. Interviews with her parents stated that they had both disowned Prudence. Despite the many years that had passed since Lila's death/disappearance, her parents appeared to have remained unforgiving of Prue. There was no mention of her on either of their social media accounts, and she appeared to have no involvement with the children they had acquired since. Searches for the Hemmings family in the local area were equally dead ends. I looked at link after link, desperate to find something, but they all started to blur into one, until finally I saw something. An obituary for Bernard Bernie Hemmings, who had fallen from the tower block in unexplained circumstances after being diagnosed with dementia months before his death. I was surprised that it hadn't made bigger news. It had only been about a year. There were no details of where to find them, but his wife Prudence and her sister Bridget were listed as contacts to find out details of the funeral. It's scary what you can do with the internet these days, but just with those phone numbers, I was able to put them into a reverse directory and find an address for Bridget and Tony Bishop, the sister and brother-in-law that Prudence was supposedly living with.
About 4 a.m., I managed to get some sleep. Not much, though. I was back up and wide awake around 7 a.m., planning my route and working out my day. I saw a post on the social media from one of her relatives that Georgia was identified and is stable. This loosened the knot in my stomach that had been present since I found the note somewhat. At 8:50, I opened the door to my flat, hoping to see Postman Ian. 4 minutes passed, and instead of the postman, an elderly gentleman made his own way down the corridor. He had a walking stick and kind eyes. In his free arm he carried a small plastic bag containing a newspaper and milk. He smiled and said, "Good morning," as he passed. I smiled back. He reminded me of my granddad. I imagined him pulling cola cubes from his pocket for his grandkids and shushing them when their parents weren't looking. A little further down the corridor, the old man stopped and turned. He looked me dead in the eyes and with a sympathetic expression and spoke.
No post on a Sunday if that's what you were waiting for.
He smiled knowingly and turned to unlock a front door that until shut I couldn't see the number of. When I saw the door close and the number 48 boldly displayed above the peephole, I understood what Prudence had meant. Mr. Prentice did seem to be a lovely chap. I sat back in my flattened side, staring at the various tabs open on my laptop. At about 9:15 the knocking on the balcony door started. The window cleaner was back. I didn't feel half as terrified as I had the first time. If anything, I was just angry. Took every ounce of restraint I had in my entire body not to engage with him, only to tell him to fuck off. His genuine seeming request just irritated me. After about 20 minutes of being watched, the knocking started to give me a headache, so I grabbed a bag and left the flat. I decided there was no time like the present. I was going to turn up on the bishop's doorstep looking for her sister because of the freaky flat she left behind, then I had to get it over with. If the address was old or the bishops weren't the people I was looking for, then I was going to look stupid whatever time of day I went.
And I couldn't take the window cleaner's eyes anymore. There was something about them. They really do make you want to open that door. I looked at the lift and entered the communal hallway, and I decided today I would take the stairs. I couldn't stand to be in a small box that my partner probably died in very painfully in. My heart dropped into my stomach just at the sight of it. The stairs were as grody as the lift. We'd taken them multiple times to move in on move-in day, but I hadn't really taken it in the same way I could now. I thought about the rules and all the strange things happening in this building. I looked at the badly painted numbers on the walls as I reached each landing. Nothing in this building is simple. I looked at the numbers. 7, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, G. Maybe it was the sleep deprivation, but my legs were in agreement with my mind that I had definitely just descended more than 6 flights of stairs. They'd glitched. I looked at the dusty and poorly lit stairwell from the bottom. It seemed dark despite the sun pouring in from the glass panel in the main building doors. The note never mentioned glitchy stairs. Maybe I really was losing my mind. As I turned to exit the building, a woman walked in. She was in her late 30s to early 40s and had 2 small children in tow. One boy and one girl. I guessed that they were twins. They were both incredibly blonde, with deep brown puppy dog-looking eyes, and couldn't have been any older than 6 or 7. They were as close to identical as it gets in twins of different genders. I'm not a fan of kids, but they were super cute. The lady had a short bob haircut that got longer at the front. It was uniform and dyed a perfectly even auburn color. I knew it was dyed because her roots were blonde like the kids. She looked as tired as I felt, but she pulled herself together when she saw me, running fingers through a part of her hair that she must have missed how early she left this morning. Who's speaking first? It's
You're
kind of unclear.
Terry.
Okay. Hi, are you visiting? Who opened with, trying to make small talk.
No, I just moved into flat 42 on the 7th floor. I was just leaving, actually. Whereabouts are you?
I was desperate to go. I had feared myself up to see Prue, but I didn't want to be rude. I'm flat 26. My name's Terry. This is Eddie and Ellie. She gestured to
It's
this.
just... Yeah,
Oh, you want?
sorry.
No, take it away.
I didn't, but I don't know why. I was about to read. Anyway,
Oh, yeah, it would
I'll
have been
read
Eddie's
them.
turn.
Yeah. She gestured to the 2 small children hiding shyly behind her skirt.
Welcome to the block. If you ever need anything, please feel free to give me a shout.
My name's Katie. People can call me Cat too. That's really kind of you. Thank you. I will. Hey, is there something wrong with the stairs? I stopped myself before going into detail.
Nothing wrong, they just skip sometimes.
She answered, shrugging. Well, I'd love to stop and chat, but I actually really need to get going. It was nice to meet you, Terry. I tried to work out what was wrong with the children as I stepped forward to walk away, still baffled by the stares.
By the way, we have a residence committee. You should come to one of our meetings. They're every Tuesday in alternating flats. This Tuesday is at Molly Jefferson's place in flat 31. Come along. We'd love to have you.
Terry suggested, waving me off. I walked out the door after my encounter with Terry, feeling sick. Every minute in this place made the note more real. Every word jumped off the page and into my life, made it more likely that Jamie was really gone. I rode the bus from a stop not far from the flats. It felt like it took an eternity to reach the little suburban area I was looking for. A 5-minute walk away from the bus stop I got off at, and I was staring at a quaint little bungalow belonging to Bridget and Tony Bishop. I knocked on the door. The lady who opened it was unsteady on her feet. She was probably in her 70s, with wispy white hair neatly scraped back into a bun, 2 strands left hanging that just softened her wrinkled face. She wore a dusty rose-colored dress that hung just below her knees and smelled of stale cigarette smoke.
Help you?
She
Yeah.
asked bluntly.
My name is Kat. I'm looking for Prudence Hemmings.
I answered, stuttering slightly. Her eyes widened slightly.
Why?
She asked bizarrely.
Is she here? It's private.
The lady ushered me into the house and sat me down on a sofa. Within minutes, there was a cup of tea in front of me. She didn't say anything to me for a while. We just looked at each other. Then she finally broke the silence.
I wondered if you'd try to find me. It took me a long time to decide whether to leave that note or not, but I decided that you deserved a head start. That's more than I ever got.
The woman was Prudence. She was nothing like I had imagined. She seemed tough and hardened, and spoke with a mostly blunt tone. She contributed before I could answer.
Tara called me not long ago. Told me that she had met the new tenant. Said you had looked shaken up, and said that my note may not have been enough. I did say I couldn't fit everything on there. And the stairs didn't seem too important. The committee wanted to organize a meeting with you on your morning moving in day, but I told them it was intrusive. The whole committee things always seemed a bit excessive to me anyway.
She spoke flippantly, like it was nothing.
It may have been intrusive, but we needed a warning. We spent a night in the place before I found your note. My boyfriend had already left for work at 3:15 and taken the lift. He didn't know.
I broke as I told her what had happened. Her face dropped, and so did my hope for Jamie.
I'm so sorry. I really don't know what to say. I thought my note would reach you in time.
She mumbled, her face to the floor, refusing to look at me as tears streamed down my face.
He's gone, isn't he? I didn't want to accept it, but I spoke to the postman, and your face says all it needs to. The postman said there might be a way I could have him back.
I bit at her, devastated and angry.
He's gone. You can't have him back. What Ian is referring to isn't what you think. There's a way to get people back from the lift, but not as themselves. Trust me, I learned the hard way. Once they're back, you can't reverse it. I'm sorry about your man, but he's gone forever. Don't dig into the other way. To be gone forever is luckier than the alternative.
She still wouldn't look up from the floor.
What do you mean?
I don't want to talk about it. I said in the note that there are things I'd rather not discuss, and I need you to respect that, or I won't be speaking to you at all. Now move on and ask what you need to ask.
Prudence cut me off. I decided not to push the topic further and moved on to some other things I needed to know.
What's the deal with Terry's kids? They seem sweet and normal.
Hang on, Eli's scratching at my door. I'm letting him in.
Aw.
Oh.
It's cooking time. I'll mute it if it happens, but if you start to hear a really obnoxious fire alarm, it's because it's sensitive as fuck and there's actually no fire.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
You might be able to hear him whine.
Aw.
Those little demon creatures aren't anything but normal.
She answered, wincing slightly at the thought of them.
When she went into labor, Terry never made it to the hospital. They were the first children ever to be born inside the building, and with everything that goes on, it's like something's rubbed off on them. They're average children in the daytime, but they never sleep, ever. Poor Terry hasn't had a day's rest since they were born. They also really love to steal birds and rats they find. The cats playing them with, and they torment them. Really annoys the cats.
As she finished speaking, a small hairless cat strutted out from behind an armchair across the room, meowing softly. It brushed its head against Prue's exposed legs, leaving scorch marks where it touched. She didn't react. She reached down and stroked the top of its head, smiling as it purred.
And those?
I asked, eyes stuck to her now badly burned legs. She chuckled, pulled out a box and lit a cigarette, tapping the top layer of ash into a small silver dish in front of her. She offered me one, and I took it gladly.
One sec, I'm trying to calm him down.
Aw.
Drink.
Okay, I got him on my lap now. They've always been my good friends. I couldn't leave the building without bringing a part of home with me. This little guy's Damon. He's seen some things.
She gushed, not taking her eyes off the cat.
But where did they come from? Why are they everywhere?
I asked, watching in disbelief as her burn subsided. It seemed impossible, but I looked at my arms where I had picked up the cat the night before, and there was no evidence that it ever happened. They didn't even appear sunburnt.
No one really knows. It started to appear after the fire, a few years after I moved in. It was rumored that they were the pets of the residents that burned, and that was why they had no fur. But I don't think that's true.
I interrupted, and I just wanted to clarify, I actually took 6 pages because I realized I missed my turn the last time.
All right.
Ah, no worries. I met one of those neighbors last night. She said her name was Natalia. She almost killed my best friend. You're crazy if you think your note was enough of a warning.
I ranted emotionally.
Look, girl, if I had made a song and dance about warning you, then you'd have thought me crazy and challenged the rules. You'd have been dead already. Be grateful you got anything. I didn't. I had to work it all out. Your generation are so spoiled. Oh, great, I'm a boomer.
She tutted in frustration at me. I was angry, but she was probably right. An elderly lady telling me rat-like creatures would kill my boyfriend in the lift would probably have got some laughs from me a few days ago. I stayed quiet and waited for her to calm down. After a while, she sighed and started again.
I think the cats are the neighbors that burned. They've never meant any harm and they hiss and run from the imposters that roam the building. Besides, there's no way that there were that many cats living on one floor. The imposter... Is it still going?
Yeah.
The imposter people don't even match up with the residents that died in the fire. None of them look like or claim to have any of the same names as the dead. They just claim to live in their flats. I've met Natalia before. She left a bad scar on Bernie's leg from an incident we had. Nasty girl. Before the fire, there was a CCTV There was a recording saved of about 15 people marching into the flat and up to that floor about half an hour before the fire started. It was the only evidence found. CCTV wasn't great in the 80s, so they were never identified. And the flames melted in the relevant camera, so nothing ever came of it. I think the people that entered that night are the ones that ask for sugar. I don't know any more than that, but if you avoid them, like I said, you don't need to know more. They ate the cats. I hope your friend survives. But I've seen what those people can do, so maybe she was better off dead. Sorry if you can hear my dog whining.
It's all good.
Prue carried on stroking Damon. I watched the skin on her fingers melt and twist as they made contact with him.
What happened to your husband?
I asked the question so fast, I didn't have time to consider that it was a topic she had explicitly said she didn't want to discuss in the note. But I had to know. She scowled at me.
I said I didn't want you to talk about it.
She hissed.
I just lost the love of my life. I need some answers.
I begged.
What happened to Bernie won't help you. I know you think any deaths in that building would be down to the quirks, but this wasn't. For the most part, anyway. Don't forget, we had lived there for 35 years. Bernie knew the rules. We knew how to take care of ourselves and have a happy life there. It was our home.
I don't doubt that, Mrs. Hemmings. I'm sorry.
I interjected.
Bernie had dementia. It started about 6 months before he died, and he deteriorated very rapidly. Towards the end, he started wandering. The doctor said it was common, but in our position, it was incredibly dangerous. More times than I can count, I pulled him away from the lift just in time. Along with wandering, he was forgetting the rules. He let that smug, awful window cleaner in 3 times. Thank the Lord for the big metal pipe I kept in the balcony door. Chased him out a treat. Not that anything stops him from coming back. I'm sure you're already acquainted. After all the dangerous situations Bernie was in, by the end, he made the smallest and most fatal of errors. He left a bowl of food out for Damon at 10 a.m. I was out shopping with Terry, and we had and a few of the girls from the committee, and when I came back, I found one of those awful creatures.
Prudence started to cry. I put my hand on her shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. After all, I truly knew how she felt.
See?
She sniffed and steadied herself to continue, moving my hand.
I chased the creature away with the same metal pipe I had, the window cleaner, and pushed Bernie off the balcony. He was heavy, but I didn't want anyone to know what really killed him. Its teeth.
She shivered.
It made such an awful noise. It reminded me of...
Lila.
I finished her sentence. I hadn't meant to. I was so invested in her story I couldn't help it.
I gather you spoke with Ian then.
She said, sounding resigned.
I never meant to hurt that little girl. I loved her so much.
Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. Damon, who was now sat next to her on the sofa, shuffled closer as if to cuddle her.
Haven't you ever been curious about getting her back?
I asked, my mind turning back to the methods hinted at by both Prue and the postman.
I miss Jamie so much. I'd do anything to get him back.
Her face filled with a look of horror and shame.
I have.
She answered.
Which is exactly why I'm telling you not to.
But I couldn't let it go.
Surely anything must be better than gone forever.
I pestered. I wish I hadn't. Prudence, frustrated, stood up and gestured for me to follow. She led me outside to the back garden of the bungalow. At the back was a large shed, the kind people used for a man cave or a summer house. It was pretty, the sun shone down on it, lighting up the few cobwebs in the corners and making them twinkle. Mrs. Hemmings was careful to look into both neighboring gardens to ensure there was no one around before she unlocked the door to the shed. We stepped inside, and the first thing to hit me was the smell. It was putrid, like rotting meat. I looked at the floor and covered my nose with my hands. Staring back at me was a pool of blood. I followed the blood with my eyes as Prudence locked us in the shed. Then after I made it past the animal bones, I finally saw it. Just like Postman Ian had described, one of the creatures was watching me from a heavy-duty metal dog cage in the corner of the shed. It looked reinforced, but still the metal had chew marks. Their jaws had to be strong to cause that. That didn't surprise me looking at it. Its rodent-like nose and beady, yet somehow human-like eyes were nothing compared to the two very visible rows of jagged, sharp teeth that lined each gum. Despite its small stature, it was terrifying. Prudence opened a drawer in a dusty cupboard across the room and pulled out a can of dog food. She poured the contents into the bowl and passed the bowl through the feeding hatch. The cage had a safety feature, meaning the animal couldn't access the food until the hatch was locked from the outside. I was grateful for this. Prue turned to me and spoke. She brushed one of the two strands of hair framing her face behind her ear. Gesturing to the hideous creature, she said,
I would like to introduce you to my granddaughter, Lila.
I was in complete shock, looking at it. At her. Prudence had a facial expression filled with guilt, and now I knew the truth. I could see it. The creature was exactly how Ian had described, except with wavy ginger hair and a sadness in its beady eyes. This abomination was Lila. This was how Prudence had brought her back, and this was the only way I could ever see Jamie again, a risk I wasn't going to take. After days of disbelief, the reality finally hit me like a ton of bricks. Jamie was dead, and he wasn't coming back.
Why did you do this?
I asked, my voice shaking with horror. Prudence scowled at me, trying to mask her shame.
Want this? If you think this was my aim, then you're sicker than I am. I just wanted my granddaughter back. When she died, a part of me died. My son blamed me, his wife blamed me, and although he never said it, I could see in Bernie's eyes that he did too. I'd pushed for her to stay. I wanted to spend more time with her. I got cocky about my ability to cope with the strange occurrences in the flats. I know what you must be thinking, but I swear I didn't know about the sleepwalking until it was too late. We had moved into that flat not long after my son left home to move in with his girlfriend. He was the youngest of three, and he was the last to fly the nest. So we downsized for the two of us. He never knew what we were facing in that flat, or the dangers he sent his little girl into. When it happened, it was a few years after the fire and the troubles with the creatures. We struck the deal with the things in the lifts, and the neighbors of the burnt flats had become a fixture just like any other quirk. I really thought she would be safe.
Is it me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Prudence paused to gaze longingly at the mutated little girl in the cage. The creature just twitched. In return, it bared its 4 rows of teeth and made a gentle hiss. But how did you do this? I stopped her with more urgency this time, looking at Rat Lila in disbelief. I had to get answers out of her fast. I didn't want to spend any more time than was absolutely necessary in this shed.
Gardener helped me,
she answered, her voice trembling. Who the fuck is the gardener? I grew more impatient with every new confusion she threw at me. The last thing I needed was something new and potentially malevolent in the mix.
Didn't mention him on my note because he's been gone for over 20 years. It'll be of no concern to you, so don't worry. His damage is in the past now. Around the time Lila went missing, the council granted permission for the tower block next door. But before that was built and the land it sits on acted as a communal garden for ours and the neighboring tower block on the other side. It had a regular gardener named Derek who would often see tending the flower beds out front. Derek was one of the first people I met when I moved in. Like I said, I had to work it all out myself, and the first time the window cleaner came onto the balcony, I naturally reached out to let him in for enough offer a cup of tea. As I hand as my hand applied pressure to the handle and to open the balcony door, there was a knock at the front door. I made a gesture to the cleaner to indicate that I would only be a minute and answered. There was Derek. He's he stopped and told me not to let the man in, that I would be making a huge mistake. I thought he sounded crazy. I told him so. But after a while of arguing, I got up to reboil the kettle and let the man in, and Derek grabbed my hands and shouted at me to look at that man outside. When I turned back to look, there was no man outside, but a monster. He was tall and impossibly thin, flesh and bones, but somehow thinner than bones, with graying skin stretched over them. He had eyes that seemed to be so deep they went on forever, like the blackest cave you could imagine. Saliva dripped from his mouth and landed on my balcony floor, some sliding down the glass panel of the door. I opened my mouth to scream, but as I did, Derek let go of my hands and the monster was gone. In its place was that smug, friendly man begging for a drink while he cleaned my windows. It took me a minute to process it, but I know what I'd seen. That was the real window cleaner. I never intentionally opened it or tried to open the door for him again. That day, Derek didn't stay long. He didn't tell me what the window cleaner is, or why he visits every few days. He didn't explain anything about the weird things that go on. As much as Derek was a part of strange happenings, he was like that. He was like one that had been carved from light. He said that he'd always be around when I needed him, that it was his job to look after the residents just like the flower beds. Over the years, he appeared a few times. He was instrumental in striking a deal with the creatures. When neighbors died in the fire, he created a special display for them in the garden and made sure that nothing planted was poisonous to the cats as soon as they arrived. He also stopped an imposter from killing Bernie at our front door. He seemed like such a good thing for the residents, always there to help, offer some gentle advice or a creative solution, someone to be trusted. He changed when they granted planning permission for the other block, though. He knew his garden would be dug up to lay foundations and he used his uses redundant. He became grumpy and bitter over time, but no one paid enough attention to notice, especially not when my tragedy struck. When Lila died, I was devastated. Derek appeared to me as I sat on a bench in the garden crying. He offered to help me, to use the garden to get her back. I snapped at him. I told him it was his fault and that he should have been there when it happened to stop them. He worked so hard on the agreement with the creatures, spent a lot of time with them. Lila broke the rule and he had to allow them to do what they had been agreed to. He said he couldn't have stopped them, but he wanted to help to make things right. I understood why he hadn't intervened, but I couldn't accept it. I lashed out at him. I'm embarrassed to say I actually slapped the poor man along with stamping on his freshly painted flower bed. I was angry and grieving. I quickly burned myself out and collapsed into a blubbering heap on the floor. Derek attempted to comfort me, but his mind was on his garden. Okay, just give me a minute. I need a drink of water.
Yeah, you've got quite a bit.
Still more to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick interlude here. Mike said, I don't mean to shit on the story, but so much of it so far is just sitting and talking. And I replied, well, Mike, I hope you at least enjoyed Kenzie's accent, because you're going to hear it for about 4 more pages. Ha ha ha.
Well, someone at least assure me that I'm doing a great northern accent. Make this worth it.
Wait, you said great and northern accent in the same sentence?
And in terms of the impression.
Ah. Gemma?
Um,
Oh, that's all I need to know. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and kill myself.
Don't do that.
it's,
Just kill a
it,
northerner to make up for it.
I must
Kill
admit
the
though,
northerner to gain its powers.
you sound more Irish.
I've been trying not to. I know I've slipped into that sometimes.
Well, hoity hoy.
Yeah.
One more should drink. Getting cotton mouth here, doing whatever the fuck accent I'm doing.
There's definitely some northern inflections in there, though, so you're on the right track.
You okay there, Manny?
Excuse me, I have a drinking problem.
Manny's dying.
You alright?
Yep.
You're not dying anymore.
Nope. Okay, maybe I am. Okay, I'm dead now. We can just continue with Ghost Manny.
So,
Ghost Manny.
oh, so before we stop, so when should we decide to cut it off? Because I know this is part 1, and we're 81 pages into 195.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe at like 97, try and go for halfway.
Yeah, we're almost halfway there, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, so Derek attempted to comfort me, but his mind was on his card. He said he was sorry for my loss, but I shouldn't have attacked the flower bed. That always been nice to me, and I should be kinder in return. I snapped and told him that it didn't matter because because it was all about to be bulldozed the next few days anyway. I should have told him. I should have taken more note of the way he twitched as I said that. He snapped. I'm sorry if you can hear my dad in the background. I told them to speak softly, but he's not.
That's all good. I can't hear you. I can't hear them anyway.
Okay,
It's
good.
fine on my end.
I'm always self-conscious because I know it's easy to hear Eli when he starts barking. So when my dad starts barking, I just want to be like, shut the fuck up. He said that he knew I was angry, but there was no need to take it out on him. If I was that desperate to get Lila back, he knew a way. But it was dangerous. I begged. Anything, I said. I would do anything. He told me it was simple and that all I had to do was enter the lift and offer the creatures some food whilst repeating the phrase, oh, we've got... I don't know, is that Latin? French? What the fuck is that?
Yeah. Revertitur mortuus.
Revertitur mortuus during their frenzied hours. He said that there was no guarantee they wouldn't be crunching on my bones before I even got the first word out, but that if I succeeded, I would have Lila back. Of course it was successful. There wasn't a creature in sight as I performed the ritual as instructed. I thought nothing happened at first. She didn't appear straight away, but a few days later I found her running around inside my house. She had taken a chunk out of Damon's ear with her teeth. I tried to kill her at first, but just as I was about to finalize it, I saw in her eyes who she was. I tried to look for Derek, but at this point the workmen had started. Nothing was left of his garden, and nothing was left of Derek. No one's seen him since. You see, Kat, nothing in that building is totally harmless. You have to be on your guard at all times. I've kept her like this ever since. You may think I'm crazy, but I couldn't kill my granddaughter. I'm not a monster.
Prue sighed and ushered me back out of the shed. She locked the door behind us, closing the padlock on our most hideous secret. I was exhausted. It was a lot of information to take in, and as a result of the information I'd received, real grief from my boyfriend was finally settling in. Every hope I had was dashed. I know many of you tried to tell me in the comments that he was gone, but I wanted you to be wrong so bad. couldn't bear to look at Prudence Hemmings for another moment. I made my excuses and left, morosely riding the bus back to the tower block I had once been so excited to live in. It was mid-afternoon by the time I got home. The choice between the stairs and the lift didn't strike much enthusiasm into me, but I opted for the stairs. And after what I'm sure ended up being 11 flights, I made the 6 flights up to the stairs to my flat. I laid on our mattress on the floor and sobbed for Jamie. I sobbed so hard my throat went dry and hurt my stomach. It cramped. My stomach cramped with each gasping breath. I sobbed myself to sleep. My body and mind must have given up fighting the need to rest and shut down. When I woke up, it was late, about 10 p.m. I wrote as much of this update as I could for you guys, hit post, and just sat at the dining table with my head in my hands. My whole life has fallen to shit, and I knew it. I thought about so many things, questioned why they were happening to me. I searched social media updates on Georgia, but there were none. Jamie wasn't super close with his family, but I knew it wasn't long before they'd start to worry. Everything I considered just snowballed in my mind.
You want to keep going after that? I'm good.
I can
Alright.
take over.
Yeah, cool.
I just need to rest and keep drinking water.
The loneliest
Just keep going.
The loneliness in dealing with the situation was killing me. I decided to do something I usually wouldn't. I went downstairs, and I knocked on the door of flat 26. Terry answered. Her perfectly bobbed hair was a little unkempt and out of place. She had huge bags under her eyes, and I could smell wine on her breath. Kenzie.
Hang on. Are you okay, Kat?
She looked concerned. I found it ironic that she looked so disheveled I had forgotten it was me who came for help.
I'm not. I. I'm sorry. I know I don't know you. I just.
I could barely speak.
Called me. She told me everything. I'm sorry about your boyfriend. It's a shame I never got to meet him.
Terry stared back at me with the same expression a mother would, warm and understanding.
Would you like a cup of tea? Maybe something stronger?
I'd love a coffee, please.
I answered meekly, making my way into the living room. Her sofa was comfy. It reminded me of being back home at my parents' before any of this started. Terry trotted out to the kitchen, stumbling slightly. I could see the kitchen counter from the sofa, and the empty bottle of wine that accounted for her stumbling. As she boiled the kettle, there was a huge crash from somewhere inside the flat. I jumped, feeling startled. Terry coughed in a meager attempt to conceal the noise.
Excuse me for just a moment, please.
She muttered apprehensively as she walked out of the living area and into the hallway containing the bedrooms. I heard another crash, giggling, and some inaudible shouting. After a while, things went quiet and Terry came back into the living room.
Got that? Kids, you know?
She announced, brushing off the noises. I'd almost forgotten about Eddie and Ellie. It was late already, and by the resigned expression on Terry's face, indicated that this was how all her nights began. I nodded. I couldn't muster up much more of a response. I think she could see that I just needed to sit there. She got up to finish making, and then set the cup of tea in front of me with 2 digestive biscuits. I hadn't eaten properly in days, and I really needed the sugar. It turned out me and Terry got along really well. We have similar taste in movies, music, and food despite the age gap. We spoke for about an hour about random, normal stuff. It was nice to get a break from the madness. I got used to the crashing around from the twins. I even laughed a few times. I'd forgotten what that felt like these past few days. The break didn't last long. The next noise that we heard was louder than the first. It was quickly followed by 2 small children running into the living room and diving into their mother's arms. I was taken aback for a moment. Eddie and Ellie were dressed in pajamas, and were still the cute children that I had met in the hallway, but something was different. Their brown puppy dog eyes had become deep voids, like what I'd imagined when Prue described the window cleaner's true form. and at the ends of their fingers were long, sharp claws protruding from where their nails should be. I didn't have time to recoil in terror at their new looks. Terry clutched them and asked them what was wrong. They wailed and buried their uh, voids where their eyes should be into their mother's shoulders. Despite their terrifying exterior, these two were very scared little kids. It had
Sorry to
been
interrupt, but when did you say you wanted to stop?
97.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
97. I thought you said 87. I was gonna be like, Manny.
It had been a very long day, and I thought my nightmare was over, but it was only just beginning. Ellie mumbled into Terry's shoulder, in that high-pitched voice kids do when they're scared.
Mummy, we're sorry. We didn't mean to let them in. We were just teasing.
They're coming!
Hissed Eddie in the same distressed high-pitched tone.
Who's? What have you done?
Terry asked, color drained from her face. The kids didn't get a chance to reply. Terry's face turned paler than I thought possible. I looked up, and standing in the living room door were about 10 people, all incredibly average looking. They were almost expressionless. They didn't look angry or pleased to see us. They were dressed in nondescriptive clothes. I imagined trying to describe them to one of those artists that draws pictures for the police, and I genuinely don't even think one of them had a distinguishing feature. That's why it took me a while to spot her in the crowd, even though she had been glaring at me the entire time. Natalia. When I first saw Natalia, all I could picture was Georgia. The way her skin melted off her face, the smell of her hair burning, and the sound that she made. I didn't have time to count, but there were more than I originally thought. I figured there must have been the 15 people, these must have been the 15 people Prudence talked about, entering the flats that burned before it happened. I already knew that Natalia was one of them. Eddie and Ellie clutched Terry's skirt, trembling with fear. I wanted to help protect them, but I still couldn't help tremble a little myself every time I caught a glimpse of those hollow voids where their eyes were.
Hi, Terry. The kids said we could borrow some sugar.
She asked menacingly, grinning at the frightened family stood next to me. After a moment or two of intense staring, Natalia finally addressed me. She appeared to be the spokesperson for the group.
How's your friend doing? It was a shame we had to end our visit. I was enjoying her company. Don't speak about her. She's got nothing to do with you, you sick bitch.
I screamed at her. I couldn't bear looking at her face again.
You don't scare me with all your freak friends. I'm not going to let you hurt this lady or her kids.
Natalia chuckled. I gulped. I may talk a good game, but I am no hero. Mere days ago, I was just a young girl excited to move in with her boyfriend, and now here I am. My boyfriend's dead. My flat is like living in my own personal horror movie, and I'm standing up challenging demonic flame neighbors to defend demonic-looking children. But when I said she didn't scare me, I meant it. Something inside me was eradicating any fear of these people. I just wanted to protect the residents. Life really does throw curveballs.
I know you aren't scared. I saw it in your eyes when you stuck that big knife in my throat. That's why we're here. My brothers and sisters are not freaks. You're the freaks, thinking that your lives have meaning. We watched you people go about your day-to-day lives or your mundane routines, and nothing really changes. Your lives are pointless and disposable. That's why we set the fire all those years ago.
She chuckled throughout her words. There was an animation in them like she was a psychotic cartoon character, finally catching its prey after 138 episodes of chasing.
Those people weren't disposable.
Terry mumbled, barely a decibel higher than a whisper.
What was that, Terry? Did you have something to say?
Natalia went from psychotic cartoon to school bully. She made my skin crawl.
I was only a child, but those people were friends of my parents. They were good people.
Terry said with slightly more confidence. None of the other people had moved. They just stood there, staring.
Why would you burn people alive? What can you possibly gain?
I interjected, taking a slight step between Natalia and Terry and the kids. I could see she was getting ready to go for them, and I couldn't let it happen.
We were living with the great leader, Michael, all of us, living in the righteous manner that he had directed us to live.
She gestured to the people around her. The name Michael appeared to inspire some sort of emotion in the group.
Michael's brother Jonathan lived here, on the floor we burned. He let us hang out there sometimes, but he didn't live the righteous way that we did. He didn't like our beliefs, but he took us when we lost the place we were staying because of the growth of the group. Him and Michael rarely saw eye to eye. We argued passionately. Our group never believed in living within the constraints of societal norms, and we were up at all hours. We came and went as we pleased, embracing freedoms and listened to music as we did introspective work.
Terry shoved the kids further behind her and snapped, infuriated.
Um,
Go on.
should we end it after she's done?
Yeah, I know what's coming up, and I'll tell you when it's gonna end. Well, when we'll end it.
Okay.
Excuse me.
You were a group of entitled, bratty hippies that came following some middle-aged, mentally ill twat. Listen to yourself. The stereotypical cultist drivel coming out of your mouth right now.
Terry cried. I was shocked at her outburst. Although I couldn't have agreed more, it did sound like cultish drivel. It made me so angry that this was what an entire floor of people died over. As Terry ended her rant, the curtains hanging on the window behind her burst into flames. I jumped and felt my heart skip a beat.
Don't insult us. I'm sick of hearing simple-minded people call us a cult. Came from the back. Oh, sorry.
Came from the back row. An average-looking man with dark hair and jeans had piped up, smiling and watching the curtains burn. He had done that. They were all capable of what Natalia had done to Georgia at the very least. For the first time since the people had entered, Terry's flat, my nerves of steel had wavered. I realized that we were only alive because they were allowing it so far. We were in big trouble. Terry swiftly shut up, and Natalia continued her story.
Michael was the true leader, not like all the fakes you hear of in the news. People you're talking about. He was teaching us to build a world of peace and harmony. We didn't deny that in order to do that you had to eradicate the non-believers. He taught us to embrace the bad in us, to harness it so that we could do extraordinary things.
She smiled wickedly as her hands glowed hot coals as she spoke. It may have sounded like cultish drivel, but Michael, being a total faker, wouldn't explain their powers.
Things went wrong when someone went to the police after Michael and Jonathan had a terrible argument one night. When the police arrived, Jonathan told us to go. The group had been planning to leave this building anyway. We'd had nothing but interruption and trouble in our time here. This place is weird. We had nowhere else immediate to go. The police already disliked us after overcrowding the last property. We didn't need any more attention. Michael was furious. We brainstormed in the field for hours what we could have done it. Like who could have done it. I personally suspect the next door neighbor, Mavis. The woman was so nosy, always knocking and asking us to keep the noise down, interrupting our spiritual sessions. Michael couldn't make a certain judgment on the person who had done it. All we were sure of was that they had been on the same floor. So he instructed us to go back that night and eradicate the whole floor and every non-believer who lived there. As you know, we obliged.
This incited sick laughter from the crowd. I waited, forcing myself to let her finish, buying time.
We took pleasure in their screams, in watching every man, woman, and child go up in flames through their front door windows. It was the first time we'd unleashed all that energy, and we felt so powerful. But then we left the burning hallway behind us and entered the stairwell. This building found a way to fuck us over one more time. I couldn't give you a number on the amount of times we tried to run down those stairs, leave our glorious victory behind us, and return to Michael. Didn't matter how many times we tried. We couldn't make it past that floor, the stairs wouldn't let us. It didn't take long before the fire reached the stairwell we were trapped in, burning us all, along with the non-believers. We died just in time for the fire engine to arrive. We may have been dead, but we didn't disappear. We couldn't leave the building. We were stuck just wandering it in and out of the burned flats and hallways, but not allowed anywhere else unless we were asked. It was awful. We didn't try to cause any trouble at first. We waited for Michael to come and find us, instruct us. 2 months passed, and he hadn't come. Instead came confirmation. A newspaper put through the door of the building. Headline news. Tower Block resident Bernie Hemmings information vital to imprisonment of local cult leader on drug charges.
I gasped. I couldn't believe I hadn't found that when I was researching Prue, but I suppose local news wasn't so heavily online back then. Natalia saw my shocked expression and grinned wider than before.
The old bat didn't tell you that then?
She asked, although it wasn't really a question.
That her stupid husband is the whole reason we're here? We didn't start to really cause issues then. Did anything within our power to fuck the whole building over. But it didn't take them long to work out that we had to be asked to come in. We only stopped when Prue worked out that way that we could die a second time and that we bound up coming back again. She killed 2 of our group. She was the only person that could stop us. We couldn't do shit with her around. We stopped and reached a stalemate. Then she moved out. We were going to honor that stalemate until you stabbed me. Prue's gone. It's fair game in here now.
As Natalia got angrier, a member of her group started getting agitated. They all soon followed like a hive mind, working as one. The stillness became chaotic, with all of them moving and making noise. I didn't notice at first when one started walking towards Terry and the kids, but I noticed when it got near. It was a teen girl, slender and pretty, but still unsettlingly average. As she got within a meter of the family, Ellie suddenly went rigid. The claws that replaced her fingernails grew longer and sharper, with jagged edges from growing so fast. The voids deepened, if that was even possible. She opened her mouth to reveal rows of sharp teeth, blood caked where the tooth meets the gum where they had grown too quickly as well. Ellie jumped. She reached out towards the girl and slashed her face with claws, leaving deep gouges across her eyes. She clung to the girl using her claws as well as wall pegs, keeping herself at eye level. Eddie controlled the crowd. His own claws grew and ran as he ran towards them, sending them scattering out of the flat. Random bursts of flames erupted everywhere, lighting up the whole room. Shit had hit the fan. The 2 demon children were successfully fending off a group of 15 dead superhuman cultists. Natalia ran from them too, but kept her eyes locked on mine as she did. As she ran from the flat, she spoke to me.
This isn't over!
She screamed, and I knew that it wasn't. I stayed on Terry's sofa that night. We organized all the burned items in the house and threw things out before we crashed out in the early hours. The kids' claws retracted, and they returned to their earlier state, causing mischief in the hallways. They were too young to really understand. I didn't sleep much. Nothing new. When I woke up, Terry was still asleep. I didn't want to disturb her, so I walked back to my flat, desperate to avoid anything strange on my way. The stairs must have noticed because they didn't skip on my way up. I hadn't checked the time when I left Terry's, but I reached my door at the same time as a familiar face. Postman Ian was stood there, dropping letters on my doorstep. And I think that's where we'll end it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'm gonna have to probably head off because I really need to go to the bathroom. So I'm gonna head off now.
Alright.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on, Gemma.
Bye, Gemma.
Yeah,
Good
no
night.
problem. Good night.
Good night. Alright, so that was part 1 of the no sleep story.
Hmm.
What do you think?
I feel bad every time you ask me this because I feel like I just that kind of person who's very hard to please.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm liking this a lot. Here's my issue is that we're reading it dramatically, and I do not think that suits the tone at all. This is the kind of horror that is silly and over the top, and at first, like, I was kind of vibing with that kind of approach in the beginning until we got to Natalia's monologue, and all I could picture is Dr. Evil giving this kind of speech.
I see.
And I think this is more campy. And like, I mean, just look at the line. Where was it?
I don't know, I closed it.
Hang on. 2 demon children were successfully fending off a group of 15 dead superhuman cultists. I mean, come on. And then the head honcho leaves by shouting, "This isn't over." I just think it's campy, and I think that's where the charm lies, and that's just me.
Yeah, I guess I don't really agree.
And that's fine.
Alright, but guys, thank you for joining us. We will be back next Wednesday to finish this story, and then next Thursday will be the continuation of Fox Vomit Ball Girl.
Empress Teresa.
Yes, that.
I think were you drinking tonight?
No.
Oh.
I think my mind is just trying to protect me at this point.
Because you mentioned you had a drinking problem when you were coughing. I was like, oh no.
No, like have you ever seen Airplane?
No.
Like in the movie, the protagonist says that he has a drinking problem, and every time he tries to take a drink of water or something, he ends up splashing himself in the face. Just like a corny joke. But so guys, thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Same bean time, same bean channel.